Hello, British literature scholars. We are now in week 8. That is about the midway point of our semester. Now, I don't know how you feel about this, but honestly, I feel like it shouldn't already be the midway point of the semester. I don't know where those first 8 weeks went, but we are now in the 8th week, and we are just moving right along. All right. I do have to submit your midterm grades by Wednesday to the registrar, who will then release those grades to you later in the week. I think just about everyone in this class is passing, several with A's, so that's a good thing. So good job so far. We're at the midway point. Let's just keep that going all the way till the end of the semester, and you should be fine. Your midterm grades should be pretty accurate. I've graded everything. I think I've got like 2 or 3 of the quizzes left from this week, and then the week 7 postings. And then after that, I will submit the grades. I have until Wednesday to do it. So by midweek, you should have your grades on all of those things, and I should have your midterm grade to the registrar, and that will get you caught up, and that will get me caught up, and that will allow us to know where you stand right now as far as this semester goes. All right, 2 very cool stories this week by a couple of women authors. We've got Elizabeth Gaskell's Old Nurse's Story. This is a ghost story. Now, in a perfect world, I would have taught that story and the other one, Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti, in the final week of October so that it would coincide with Halloween. However, we'll already be in the 20th century by the time we get to that point, so we're doing it now. In the Old Nurse's Story, it is a ghost story. It's a very haunting story, and the final quote at the very end of the story is very important. That which is done in youth cannot be undone in old age. Many of you are still very young, so you don't understand the importance of that quote yet, but believe me, at some point you will. And so I think you're going to really enjoy that story. Goblin Market is written by Christina Rossetti. Christina Rossetti was a very, very religious woman. So I think one of the questions I have on the posting is to compare Goblin Market to the Garden of Eden story. And the comparisons are going to be very obvious. The whole thing about temptation, the whole thing about forbidden fruit, the whole thing about how partaking of the forbidden fruit can result in death, just like in Genesis. So if you really want to reach into your religious beliefs in order to do a posting, Goblin Market is an opportunity for you. So that's another thing. Do bear in mind, there have been some very convincing arguments by critics that Goblin Market is not only a warning to young girls about sexual temptation, but also about the temptations of drugs. Now, the sexual temptation part, you have to understand. If a young lady back in the Victorian period was found fooling around before she got married, that was pretty much a death sentence for her, because then nobody would marry her. And not only that, that could be a death sentence for the entire family, because if one young lady in a family is discovered to be immoral, that means all the daughters in that family, which means not only that young lady but her sisters, would also be unmarriageable. And that was a very, very concerning thing for the Victorian period. In fact, if you read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, there is a sister in that story who I believe was Lydia, if I remember correctly. Lydia could have scandalized the Bennet family, which would have made Elizabeth and Jane Bennet both unmarriable to 2 very, very wealthy and very, very attractive suitors. But Darcy, because he was so in love with Elizabeth, ends up saving the day for the Bennet family. Therefore, he can marry Elizabeth without any scandal. So, bear in mind that the death of the sister in Goblin Market is not just a literal death, but it's a metaphorical death. And so there's a warning to young girls there not to play around before marriage. But again, the drug addiction thing also can be a part of it as well. So you don't have to answer questions about both stories. You have to answer questions about one or the other, but you still have to read both to do well on the weekly quiz. And I think you're going to really like these stories. They're both fictional stories. They're both entertaining stories, and they both have real deep meaning when you actually analyze them and take a look at them. So that's all I got for you this week. Bear in mind, your midterm grades are going to be submitted to the registrar by Wednesday. You'll know where you stand by those. But of course, you can always go into the grades tab of D2L and take a look at your grade there. And that will also give you an idea of where you stand. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and happy reading.